What's up, everybody, and welcome to a brand new episode of the Hot Mic here on the Outlaw Nation channel. I am the Outlaw John Rocha, joined as always by the Sneider himself, who's never been more inside than he is right now. Jeff Sneider, how are you, man?
I don't know what that's supposed to mean, but I'm great, Johnny. It's good to see you, buddy.
You too, my man. You too.
That we're living through out here.
Why, is something going on right now? Is something going on in the streets? What's going on in Hollywood, in LA, man?
Greedy people abound.
That's for sure. For those of you who don't know, Jeff Sneider runs Above the Line. Above the Line there has an article about Bob Iger's comments this morning. Interesting stuff talking about greedy people all around. We got a lot to get into. You all know this. The SAG strike is officially underway. Will go at midnight tonight, unless there's some crazy last-minute dealings here between the AMPTP and SAG, although judging from that press conference, which we're going to talk about here on the show, it doesn't look like this thing is ending anytime soon. We're also going to get into some James Gunn talk as well. He's adding every single superhero under the sun in the DC universe to Superman Legacy. We're going to get into some of those comments from Bob Iger and the re-upping of Bob Iger and what that means, some MI7 box office and some random stuff. And, of course, we're going to answer your StreamLabs and SuperChats as we go along in the show. Jeff, we'd be remiss not to start with the SAG strike. What a morning for sure here. Obviously, the Writers Guild has been on strike for almost 10 weeks now. And here comes SAG. They were hoping to be able to avert a strike and were working hard behind the scenes to try to avert a strike. And in the end, they officially called for the strike, and it was an overwhelming vote by the membership in majority in favor of the strike. And Fran Drescher this morning, as the president, delivered some very, very strong words towards the AMPTP, balanced by Duncan Crabtree's more legal approach to things. So it's an interesting 1-2 punch, kind of an old school thunder and lightning approach. Jeff, what are your thoughts here as we officially walk into a SAG AFTRA and Writers Guild strike? The first time since 1960 that we've had both unions striking at the same time since Reagan was the governor. What are your thoughts on this?
Yeah, I mean, it's certainly remarkable. I don't know if I ever really thought it was going to get to this point. But it's clear that the studios, have some sort of financial motivation to continue this. I mean, that's what it all comes down to is money, and whether they think that in the long run, by as that Deadline article like basically so helpfully pointed out, bleeding writers out of their homes.
Yeah.
If that math works for them, then that's what they're going to do. There's just no consideration for, the people that make up this town.
Yeah.
I mean, part of me wonders, if there was an assistants guild, would the executives all, would they hold out on the assistants who basically run their lives, or would they, because these are the people who they see every day, or would they be like, all right, we'll give in to your demands, whatever they are.
Right.
Most people don't have to deal, or at least the top people negotiating, right? The bottom,
right.
Not dealing with writers every day, or even necessarily actors.
Yeah.
So I just feel like, but in the end, it's their support staff who gets hurt.
Yes.
All the support staff. So
on down the line, right? I mean, PAs, the makeup people, the costume people, like with less and less projects to work on, all these people are going to be financially hit by the situation. And it's an ugly decision if you believe what was written in that Deadline article, which I do believe about the AMPTP and their approach to it all. They have more money than the other people down the line, so they can wait this thing out, and they want to turn people against each other. It's an old school, ugly approach to things. I mean, the next thing you're going to see people showing up with baseball bats to beat people up on the strike line. So it's not that far away, that approach to try to starve people out. Yeah.
The language is already at that level. The language has become increasingly more hostile and violent, especially when we're talking about bleeding writers, out of their homes. I mean, some people are turning to entertainment, funds to pay for groceries that week.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, because I don't even think you can file for unemployment with a strike, right?
Right. Yeah. Right. You have to. Yeah. I mean, it depends on the situation because obviously you weren't fired from the job, but if you're on a current job and the job has shut
Right.
down, yeah. So what?
Um,
Yeah.
but I think a big interesting part of this is that 12-day extension. What was
Yes.
the point of this extension?
Right.
Obviously it was the holidays, so that played into part of it.
Yes.
But the truth, as Fran Drescher, I think someone even said you're saying the quiet part out loud here.
Yeah.
Those 12 days were for the studios to they had no intention of working on a deal during those 12 days. They just wanted to get 12 more days of promoting their summer movies.
Yep.
Okay, that's why Barbie and Mission Impossible and Oppenheimer and all this stuff, all these premieres and everything happened, basically in the last 12 days. Even today,
Yeah.
and I'm told by, this comes from like a good source and everything, but like all the Oppenheimer stuff was like totally choreographed, basically. Like,
wow.
I think SAG AFTRA had said that they had some technical difficulties in setting up this press conference.
Yeah.
Believe me, that was all the major actors in Hollywood, which is, Matt Damon and Downey, all these people and their reps saying, let us get through the photo op for Oppenheimer. We'll, get those photos taken. We're going to go in the theater and we'll make a show. If you hold off on the conference or whatever, we'll make a show of going and sitting in our seats and then standing up abruptly and filing out. That's what happened. The Oppenheimer cast left their premiere in London.
Yeah. And certainly Emily Blunt on the red carpet previewed what was going to happen by saying, if they do go on strike, we will walk out in solidarity in the middle of the premiere. And certainly that's what happened. So you got to respect
that ahead of time because they knew that they were striking and they knew what time it was all going to be announced. And it's all sort of choreographed. So
I mean,
I don't think you can necessarily trust your eyes in this strike, because you have actors playing along.
Yeah.
Right. Everybody's playing along. Even the media is to some extent. I mean, we all were there, went dutifully for the premieres, and not that I was invited, but other people, played along dutifully and did their jobs. And it's just like Fran Drescher said, you're working up until they say you can't work anymore.
Right. I mean, a lot of people on our side of the business, those people get invited to junkets. They were studios were shoving in junkets one right after the other. Even today, they were scheduling junkets one right after the other. My friend Young Chavez, she tweeted out about the fact that she thought her day was done, and then boom, all these new install because they want to get everything done by midnight tonight to be able to get it done. Yeah.
And so I had gotten a message this morning, basically at like 8 a.m. that said, it's happening and they're going to strike tomorrow, basically at 8 a.m. And I wrestled with, how long at what point is SAG going to finally reveal the result of this vote? Are they going to wait until midnight or something to say something? So I did post it. I do feel like I broke the news of the strike, if you will, though I'd said it was going to start at 8 a.m. and not midnight. Either way, Friday morning. And it effectively will start at 8 a.m. because that's when you'll start to see picket lines and everything like that. So I think that may be what my source was getting at. But I think that the press conference was very effective.
Yeah.
I think she was, you can see why she maybe won election and everything. And she addressed the things about her going off to Italy to take selfies with the Kardashians. She said it wasn't a selfie, and she was there as a brand ambassador, and that's 3 hours in makeup and walking in heels on cobblestones, and it's work. And she'll work up until midnight tonight, which is when they all have to stop.
Right. Yeah, I don't. It's an interesting place to be. And first of all, I haven't always been the biggest fan of Fran Drescher. And by the way, I am SAG. Full disclosure, I'm still SAG. I haven't always been the biggest fan of Fran Drescher as the president, right? And when I saw that picture, I was a little duped by that as well. I was like, wow, why is she doing this, blah, blah, blah. But hearing them explain it in the press conference, you understand what's going on here. And I felt a little like, oh, man, I got duped by the studio. This is what they're doing. So you've got to be even more aware of everything. And as you said, don't believe your eyes initially and analyze, research, dive deeper, understand who's involved. I tweeted out, this is no surprise to anybody who's in this business. There are certain writers that are in the studio's back pockets and do the bidding of the studios for their access to directors or to junkets or whatever the studios would have you. And they're going to be writers who are going to come out with these columns. I'm predicting this now, that are going to bash the SAG leadership or start to try to create division here and paint certain people in a certain way. And so we see that. And I like that Duncan Crabtree like addressed that right off the bat and said what it was as well, to add on to what Fran was going to say about her situation. That
there's no question that the studios, that reporters and editors work closer with the studios than they do with the guilds.
Right. Yes.
That's for sure.
Mm-hmm.
They want the access to the junkets and the premiere invites
Right.
and the screening invites and
right.
All the FYC ads. So you're right in the sense that, well, I think that the trades have, for the most part, done a decent job. And even though Deadline got killed, for that article, I think it's nice to know what people are actually saying. It's like those brutally honest Oscar ballots, whether that person was authorized or spoke on behalf of the AMPT or not. That is the feeling, however fucked up it is.
Yeah.
And so I think that the trades, to their credit, have done a good job. Although, yes, if they're carrying water for anybody, it's going to be the studios.
Yeah. And so, pay attention to that as the next few weeks go along, if this thing goes on for a few more weeks. Because the Fran Drescher approach here really won me over. I had no idea she was going to come this hard, this strong out the gate. And it made it seem like that video was even more weird that they released that video, because it seemed like that was something like they were willing to capitulate to all the demands. And then that letter was generated, Jeff, because people sensed from that video that once again, SAG leadership was going to fold to the studios like they did in the last agreement, which a lot of people feel like. And so to hear her come out and say, as you said, the quiet part out loud and put it on the table for this, and nobody was uncomfortable behind her or next to her. Everybody seemed to be on board with the tone and the direction of this press conference, the combative nature. And I think it wasn't just like machine gun fire, shoot everything at the wall. It was very specific about what they were upset about, very specific about the delusions they feel that the studios put them through. And, Duncan pushing back on that reporter, asking about the AI situation, that idea of scanning background extras and using their likenesses for eternity and only paying them for one day. That's an example of the kind of abuse that these studios want to do to actors and to background performers who are essential for everything that you're doing in there. So basically it feels like there's a massive level of disrespect from the studios towards actors and towards writers, really, more than anything else. That's really kind of coming true as well. And it makes the DGA's deal look a little more wonky now in context. It looks a little bit like, what kind of groundbreaking deal did you guys actually get?
The DGA has a favored nations clause, though, so it doesn't matter what they really negotiate. It's what if they're going to benefit and get equal terms as whatever WGA and SAG negotiate.
But doesn't it look weird, Jeff? I mean, the Teamsters, Yahtzee, SAG, and the WGA are striking against, but the DGA got themselves a deal. It just feels weird to see that disconnect in unions versus the AMPTP, when it really could bring them down to their knees if all the unions got together and went against them. So it just seemed like it seems odd now in retrospect when you look at this decision by the DGA leadership.
I mean, again, a lot of it has to come down to AI.
Right. Yes.
And a lot of it is they just don't want to open up the books, that they're terrified of what that could reveal if the numbers come out and how much money they may have to pay to people who don't even know that they're owed it right now.
Yeah.
Someone brought up, I think it was Jamie Williams, who writes for the site.
Yeah.
Like with the Coming to America lawsuit, where Paramount was just so fearful of opening up their books. Yeah. And then one day you're John Landis or you're Eddie Murphy and you get a check for $16 million completely out of the sky blue, because they're just like, take this and don't even look.
It's hush money. It's essentially hush money, Jeff. To not look. I remember Tom Hanks coming out and saying that, according to the studio, Forrest Gump hasn't made a dime.
Men in Black hasn't made a dime, according to Ed Solomon and his profit participation statements.
Right. So it's just crazy when you look at it. So to me, if they can push at some point, I know sometimes I can go a little out there, but at some point, do you think, they already had a federal mediator come down and try to make them find some common ground they couldn't have done. At some point, do you think the president gets involved, like the United States president gets involved, sends their people in to negotiate a deal here and really threatens the studios with forcing them to open their books. We've seen this happen through the history of this country where presidents have interfered in labor disputes with owners and workers here. We've seen it in, labor, labor work and steel and all these kinds of things that have happened through the history of time in our country. So do you think it's possible that if this goes on long enough, President Biden and his team gets involved in this?
No, I don't see Biden doing it.
Okay.
I think, Biden, if anything, would just lean on Newsom, right? Like, why isn't a liberal governor or whatever? Like, he should sort of be getting his hands dirty here.
Yeah.
I don't really think it's on Biden. I wonder what Trump would do in this situation.
Oh, God. He'd probably try to crush all the writers and all
do you think that's who he would hate, or do you think he'd go against the studios because they're not the ones like putting money into his campaign? Like it's all
well, it ain't the actors and the writers putting money into his campaign. That's
no, I'm not saying that it is, but they're not the ones who typically finance these big campaigns. It's huge corporations.
True.
And I don't know that he benefits from those liberal candidates. But.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting how this goes on, because it does feel like from the tone that they set this morning, it is going to be a long haul, and it feels like this is going to be affecting a lot of people's livelihoods. And Jeff, I mean, it feels like we've just barely got our heads above water after the COVID situation. Now here comes something like this, right as the Emmy nominations were announced, which we're going to talk about later. Right as Comic-Con is about to happen, right as this massive confrontation between Barbie and Oppenheimer is coming next week. And also right as MI7 with Tom Cruise, the #1 movie star in the world, comes out. This is some interesting timing overall with all of this happening now. So, I mean, do you anticipate that the longer this goes, that the ugly strategy of the AMPTP may come to bear, and people start to turn on the unions out of desperation to force them to go to the table?
That's all like up to Wall Street, basically. Like the studios have enough money to wait out the writers. Like on that front, right? At some point, the writers are like, "Shit! Like I got to get back to work. Like let's just take whatever they're offering and fucking get back to work here."
Right.
Or meet somewhere in the middle, as opposed to like, we want X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if Wall Street affects the stock price to the point where investors are like, all right, like we need to get someone in there who's going to make a deal.
Yeah.
And not Bob Iger, who obviously just extended his contract through 2026 this week, which we'll talk about. But if some of these other sort of big leaders start to get fearful about their own jobs, then that's when they'll be, forced to act.
Well, it was interesting imagery that Fran Drescher used when she said, storming the gates of Versailles. That's a revolution she's talking about. That's an interesting imagery to put out there in a situation like this. Jeff, I mean, we've seen people get unstable in all over the country, all over the world. We hear about incidents happening that are pretty unsettling in ways that we haven't seen before. I mean, is there a possibility that these studio heads may have to hire extra security, maybe, fearful of going out in public and being in public areas, especially with the tone that Bob Iger set in that interview with CNBC, where he essentially tried to blame the workers for daring to ask for livable wages as he's making $27 million a fucking year. I don't recall the last time anybody said to me, I can't wait to see the new Bob Iger movie. So to me, that's an interesting a disconnect to have for these people who are so wealthy. And everyone thought Bob Iger coming back to Disney was like the white knight coming back to save us all, like Gandalf on the fucking hill. And it turns out that he's actually in cahoots with everybody that you don't like in this situation. And it's like watching your favorite uncle just calmly issue a racial insult. And you're like, oh, fuck, what do I do with this? So, yeah, I mean, this is weird situation right now.
Yeah, we can talk about all the Iger stuff.
Let's do it. Yep.
I just really do think that he jeopardized his legacy within the industry this morning on CNBC, and any hopes of a political future that he may have. I mean, if he doesn't have his base, which is Hollywood, and what, about that, I mean, the people who make up Hollywood, I just, it was head scratching just how tone deaf it was. And again, an unforced error. Like, why is this guy even going on CNBC and talking about it and becoming the face of the strike? Like, do you think that actors are going to see you on there and change their minds or something? I just don't understand it. Like, what is the logic behind who is in charge of Disney's PR moves these days?
Well, it's this idea that they're seen as businessmen, and people love Bob Iger because of the connection to Disney. So I think this was a PR ploy to reach out to the middle America person who just wants to go to the park or just wants to go to a movie. So you turn the creatives into the coastal elites because it's an effective narrative for you. So him coming there and doing what he's doing and essentially saying, you know what, these people striking, their unrealistic demands, they're going to affect all these people. It's not us. We were ready to negotiate a decent, groundbreaking deal, and we did it with the DGA. It's those people over there, those creatives, those elitists who look down on you, middle America. They're the ones who want to negotiate and hold us hostage, and it's going to affect all these people down the line. So blame them, not me or not us.
Mission, though, if that's the mission and that's the goal to get middle America or whoever, I don't even know why they're trying to necessarily convince those people. But if that is the goal, why didn't Iger let someone else be that spokesperson? Like,
It's a good question.
I thought, maybe it's because he's so secure in his.
That's what I mean. And so beloved, Jeff, maybe they felt he was the right person. I mean, Zaslav would have got skewered for this. Right. So Iger coming out, maybe they felt, well, a lot of people love Iger, so maybe they'll take the medicine easier with someone like him delivering it. But as you wrote in your piece, quite the opposite in the look. Yeah.
Again, I'm just shocked again at the unforced error of it all. Like, there's no one. You don't have to do that interview at that time on that day. Like, there could not be more at stake. Tensions could not be more inflamed. Like, what was the point?
Well, and also the words. The word disruptive is a stupid word to use when you're a CEO, because there's a connotation that word when you're talking about a labor force being disruptive. You're essentially condescending to them. And that's what that term means. And historically, through time, we've seen those fat cat owners use the word disruptive to describe people who are simply demanding a living wage and working decent hours as opposed to 15 hours a day. And you asked me a few weeks ago, like, why do we need unions? Do we need unions? What do you think about it? This is the reasons why. Because you see an AMPTP that essentially wants to turn everybody into indentured servitudes, servants who should be thankful they're even getting to work in the industry that they have created for them to be a part of. And hardly any of them are ever taken to task for the colossal mistakes they make with money, colossal mistakes they make with the decisions of the films that they release, the decisions they make in terms of what to buy, what not to buy, in terms of what we're seeing now with these buying of these studios and whatever. Hardly any of them. And they always get out of the situation with a golden parachute that takes care of them for the rest of their lives. Right. Whereas you've got a writer, I can't remember the gentleman's name, who wrote the She-Hulk episode with Daredevil. His residual check was like $369 or something. So these are the things that they're trying to create a narrative that it is the people with the have-not that are trying to be the haves. And that's not what's happening here. So I think it's kind of crazy.
Would Bob Iger not run Disney if that $54 million pay was $44 million? You know, like, and I'm not saying that he doesn't deserve the $54 million, because you deserve whatever the market dictates you're worth. So if he brings that kind of value, which I obviously think Bob Iger is a very valuable executive,
sure,
that value to the company, and he's worth every penny.
Yeah.
But when you're crying poverty, like, if all these studio moguls, if each one took a $10 million pay cut, then that's basically the difference,
right,
that these writers are asking for. I just think it is gross. And when you're doing a $33 million renovation on your home, that's what's disturbing to me, is the utter disconnect.
Yeah.
It's the same reason that Disney World prices got like just completely out of hand. Like, I mean, even they wonder why people don't go to the movies. How many more times do people have to spell it out for you that it's too expensive these days, and that it's so much cheaper to just wait for something to hit streaming? And if that's the case, then you got to really incentivize people to come to the theater by not putting it on streaming 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole town is just upside down. I don't recognize it. I don't know why they can't get out of their own way. This seems like this was such a profitable business.
Yeah.
Where did the profits go?
Yeah, I wonder, and I think there needs to be, and maybe this is not the time, but I'm gonna throw this out there. There might need to be an exploration of capping certain things. We see it in sports, Jeff. There's a salary cap. There's only so much you're allowed to make so that other players can make money too. And so if you're going to ask the studios to give, and they should give, don't get me wrong, they should 100% give. I think you've also got to look at these astronomical price or salaries that you give to these actors who are in these movies, right? I mean, why is DiCaprio making 30 million and someone else is making 5? Like Alexander Skarsgård is making 5. What if we drop that so that everybody else can make a little bit more? And then also we're taking that and taking some money out of the studio's pockets as well to pay these actors more. I think there has to be give on both sides in order to be able to make this thing function. I know I believe in a capitalist system, a free market system, and all of that. But even in sports, you've got caps in sports. Why can't you have that in the entertainment industry and entertainment business? I don't think that's out of the realm of possibility to consider.
No, I mean, not necessarily, but it's also America. I mean, that's America is uncapped, right?
True.
I don't profess to know what the solution is, only that things can't continue like they are. So, kudos. I didn't necessarily think that SAG had it in them. Kudos to Fran Drescher and everybody for actually going the distance and taking this drastic measure. Now, like, how long is it going to last?
Yeah.
I've heard it could be as short as 3 to 4 weeks to as long as mid to late October, basically.
Right.
Do expect that they will, resolve the SAG strike first.
Yeah.
And that the writers will come after SAG, and so the writers, they could come right after SAG, or they could wait a few more months after that. It could go as late as January. That's for the WGA strike. SAG could go as long as October, I think.
Right. I'm so curious to see how that's all going to play out. And I'm curious to see how the WGA is going to feel about this and deal with this. And is Fran and the SAG leadership going to work well and play well with the WGA leadership? If SAG gets a deal, is the WGA leadership, which is now celebrating SAG, on the picket lines with them? Are they going to feel betrayed by SAG getting a deal? And the Writers Guild was the first union to strike, and here are the last union to get any kind of deal. Will SAG be part of that in an indirect or direct way?
I don't know.
Painting the writers as the people holding.
I don't think so. I think if SAG, let's say SAG is on strike for a month, let's say it's 3 months, even no matter how long it is, the fact that they did this, I don't think that writers will be able to be upset with them whenever that strike does end, the SAG strike.
Okay.
I feel like you have to give it up for the solidarity, knowing it's a temporary thing. Ultimately.
Yeah, we'll see for sure. So what are your feelings about Bob Iger, though, re-upping here with Disney? Were you surprised by this? Did this make sense to you? I mean, this is an incredible contract. To what, $27 million for each of the 2 years of his contract. His new contract, which is similar to the previous one, and raises Iger's annual target bonus from $1 million to $5 million, making his target annual compensation $31 million, depending on performance and share price.
Nothing compared to what David Zaslav pulled down, a year or two ago, where he was making like $160 million a year, something insane like that. It does sound weird to say, but I guess Bob Iger at $25 to $30 million a year, it's actually not, it's not bad.
Yeah.
I know how the optics look right now.
Right.
But I think when actors were getting paid and everything, no one would really bat an eyelash at that too much. I think that he obviously needs more time to identify a successor. He needs a little bit more time to course correct and to sort of unravel the company from the mess that he kind of put them in.
Yeah.
To some extent,
by leaving and handpicking Bob Chapek. Yeah.
And just I think that all these companies are realizing that there's just the money isn't there for streaming. There's no way
Yeah.
that it could support that. And so it's like you have to basically go in reverse and try to rebuild Windows. And you know, I know he said like that linear doesn't seem to be part of the future. Or,
Yeah.
But like, I mean, I don't know what the future holds. I'm not a futurist, but I feel like the old system was working kind of well.
Well, it was for people at the top. It wasn't for people, you know, who are working day.
Writers and actors used to get they got paid,
yes,
they got paid the same amount then that they're basically getting paid now.
No,
right? And
the residuals are much less than you used to get back then. There's a great
stuff, but like bases and stuff. I feel like
you get like 900 for the day, but your residuals are like $300. That's it. That's not much for a show, and it used to be in the thousands. A great documentary I recommend to people to watch to understand the difference between what was going on in the 80s and 90s and what's going on now is I know that guy from that thing. It's a 2-part documentary. You should watch it. And some of your favorite character actors are in it, ladies and gentlemen, and you'll see people were able to live off one national commercial a year and make like 60 to 70,000 just off that, or we're making huge money doing guest star roles on sitcoms. So if you go back and watch a person's resume and go, oh, wow, in 1986, they only were on 5 shows and they bought a house off of that. That's the difference. So systematically, the union, decade per decade and agreement per agreement, has cut the wages of actors and directors and writers extremely through each meeting or through each agreement. And that's why we're in the situation that we're in now. Some bad leadership accepted some of the fancy math. So
the residual thing is tricky though, because you know there's so much greater choice and there's so many more channels and things like that. And so you know people watch this and they watch this and this and this, and it's not like, well, everybody watches this, and so that's why the residual, you could live off of it because everybody was watching it. You know, now there's fewer people watching individual things. As we saw with the Emmys, where you know there were entire categories that were just filled with 2 shows. You would almost think that there were only 2 dramas with supporting actors in them this year. No one else is recognized because everybody just watches the hot thing or whatever the media says is the hot thing, and everything else, you know, kind of gets ignored.
But then you look at those Succession numbers and you go, wait, I thought everybody was watching this show.
It's a show for the media and for Emmy voters, apparently. And, you know, no one else really gives a shit.
Yeah. Well, I will say this about this. I've never seen the membership this galvanized. It really, usually you've in the past, you've seen the sniping, you've seen the back and forths, especially on social media initially when social media was first starting out and those agreements were happening and back and forth. Like just the sniping, you know, people went after Melissa Gilbert a number of times. And so to see that the resolution and the resolve of the membership is this strong, it speaks to a real anger, a bubbling anger that's happening between the haves and the have-nots. And it's happening all across the country and the world, by the way. As Fran said in the press conference, this is not just here with us. This is happening in other businesses, in other fields, where people at the top are lining their pockets off the hard work of people in the middle and the lower parts of their company, lower levels of their company. And that needs to stop. The divide, the wealth divide, has never been higher in the history of this country than it is now. And at some point, you got to break that. And I'm not advocating revolution and storming people's houses, but I'm saying force them to open the books, break them. You've got to break them, and then you can put it back together again. You know,
I just don't know if studios are breakable, right? Or
I mean, if they open their books, I think that would break a lot of people, Jeff, and embarrass a lot of people.
Sure, yes, but I'm saying short of being forced by the government to open their books, I don't know, what the guilds can really do in that regard.
Yeah, I wonder if there's a legal remedy, a legal approach to force them to do so. Like you said, I don't know. And I wonder how many federal judges would want to weigh in against the studios to expose this kind of stuff. Probably not a lot of federal judges who would be willing to do that kind of stuff.
Let's take a break and talk about some more fun stuff.
Okay. All right. Let's take a break right now. We'll be back and we'll answer your StreamLabs and Super Chats. Keep sending them in. This address is right above Jeff's head. It's also pinned in the chat and the description of this video. We'll be right back right after this. All right, Jeff, let's get into some of these comments from some of these Streamlabs and Super Chats from our esteemed viewers here.
I just want to say there is, someone in the chat saying, like you break them by, if there's no movies being made, then you can break them. The thing is, it's like I had said at the beginning of like the WGA strike, like they're sitting on 30 years of screenplays that they've bought that are just sitting there, perfectly good to get Jack Nicholson attached 15 years ago, and then they just didn't get made. So they can go to those, just like technically with movies, they could say, we're out of movies, but we gotta bring in revenue somehow. We're re-releasing Speed, in theaters. Like you're gonna see maybe revivals, just like the same, and not just in theaters, but like in physical media. You're gonna be re-releasing. Here's this new gussed up version of whatever, just to generate income to get them through these tough times.
Well, you say that Disney just announced that Cinderella is coming out in 4K in a brand new 4K updated version. So you're right; those kinds of things are going to be what they're going to try to do.
Libraries, decades full of things to try to keep you entertained and with your mind off the fact that none of this is new necessarily.
Yeah, I spoke to a couple of friends of mine who are producers and executives, and they both said very clearly that reality shows are now going to be what they're focusing on trying to lock down and make as well. Not the game shows, actually, because I was reading quite analysis on this whole situation. Some of these game show producers are SAG or WGA producers, and so they're not crossing the picket lines to do these game shows. So that could affect that section of reality TV as well. But I've also seen some analysis that maybe foreign films, foreign studios who are not tied to the SAG AFTRA or WGA model can start to maybe be the focus of some of these streaming services to try to bring that product over and highlight it for people to watch and discover. So
there'll be a lot of local language stuff on Netflix in particular, because it has its tentacles sort of all over the world. It's a more global company than a lot of these, a lot of its rivals. Local language stuff, a lot of reality, like you said, a lot of dating shows. It's not going to be fun.
No, I can see Nick and Vanessa Lachey getting all excited right now, unfortunately. All right, let's get into these Streamlabs and Super Chats that have come through from people. We appreciate you all sending them in. This is said the address is right above Jeff's head in the Streamlabs and Super Chats. Miguel Zane says over 30% Lex Luthor casting announced this week, and among the 3 rumored, who are your preference to be cast? Mine's Nicholas Hoult. Thanks. Should we wait on that one, Jeff, till we get to the Superman Legacy stuff and then swing back to it? Let's do that.
Sure, yeah, we can circle back to that.
Okay. Miguel will circle back, I promise. Cody Hunt says, people deserve honest pay for honest work, regardless of industry, plain and simple. As a Teamsters member, I stand in solidarity with SAG AFTRA and the WGA. Hey, man, respect. And I'm sure a lot of people on the picket lines respect the Teamsters standing with them, because that's a big, big block of people stopping the studios from making their movies or doing their secret shootings that they were trying to do behind the scenes. Thank you, Cody. Tim Sim says, very interesting that the SAG strike coincided with the announcement of Bob Iger's extension as Disney's CEO. If this combined strike doesn't make a difference, oh boy. Jeff, your thoughts?
I can't really speak to the timing of it. I don't know if it's anything more than a coincidence or
Yeah, I mean, because he just got it seems bad timing. If you're going to talk about the timing, to have a CEO get re-upped and then come out on CNBC and say negative shit when he's making $31 million a year. For God's sake.
I think that's the thing. You're just trying to what is the word that I'm looking for? To
reframe the narrative.
No. You're trying to reassure investors that you're going to be around for the long haul and you're going to be able to turn the ship around.
Yeah, don't get it twisted. All these CEOs are going to stick out their chests and talk about they're fine. They're scared. If this thing keeps going, the money hit they're going to take on Wall Street is massive. Massive. Yes, boy says, gentlemen, are we watching the Barbie Oppenheimer double feature? Barbenheimer, Jeff?
I've been invited to see Oppenheimer next Tuesday night, so I'm going to see that in IMAX. Still don't have an invite for Barbie, which is disappointing. I guess Warner Brothers just doesn't like me, even though I was a finalist for the Ken role.
I don't know what that means.
I just got beat by Ryan Gosling. I would still I don't understand this struggle of which one do I have to see or whatever. You have to see Oppenheimer.
Okay.
Okay, Barbie's there. Barbie is a movie to sell toys. I mean, if it's good, that's a bonus.
Wow.
And I know, it has actors I like. It's from Greta Gerwig. Like, I'm going to give it a
Yeah.
chance. But come on, this is a new Christopher Nolan movie where, he's telling the story of like an incredibly important decision in the history of the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer to me.
Yeah. And people can see 2 movies in a weekend, for God's sakes. Come on.
Yeah, you can, but if you had to pick one, if people are only going to the one movie that weekend, I just don't understand why you wouldn't see Oppenheimer on the biggest screen possible.
It's a fair point. Jim One says, so Deadpool 3 might be shut down due to the strike, but not House of the Dragon, both filming in the UK. Wonder if House of the Dragon cast like Matt Smith or SAG. Well, actually, Jim, you're off base on that because there was new reporting in the last couple of days about it. The SAG strike does affect House of the Dragon. The writer's strike didn't, but the SAG strike does. So the British AFTRA came out and said that they are going to stand in solidarity with the SAG actors. So it may be that they will shut down House of the Dragon. That was one of the ones they listed that's going to be shut down. And I don't know. I think Deadpool 3 is going to be shut down unless they're already done filming. And those pictures that came out were just kind of weeks ago. So it's going to be interesting because there's a lot of productions now that are going to be shut down, Jeff, that weren't in danger of being shut down.
Yeah, I don't really know the status of either of those, although I was under the impression that House of the Dragon, has a largely non-SAG cast.
Yeah. All right. We'll see. Let's see. What else have we got here? Let's see. Spruce Root says, hey, John and Jeff, have you guys heard any truth to the Eben Moss Bachrach as the Thing rumors? Love his character Richie in The Bear. Jeff.
I mean, I have heard that rumor. I don't know if there's any truth to it. I don't know if they'd, again, moved off Daveed Diggs or what had happened there. I think that they want to portray the Thing as like a Jewish brawler. I don't know if Eben Moss Bachrach is in fact Jewish, but he certainly seems to give off like a sort of scrappy vibe. It wouldn't be the worst thing in the world to me. I just, I don't know. I thought they would aim a bit higher, but I guess this guy has an Emmy nomination now. And I always did like him on Girls. And what was the other one? Daredevil or Punisher?
Punisher. Yeah. He was great in Punisher. Yeah. So yeah, just looking at it here, Lord of the Rings is not going to be impacted, but HBO's The Palace, the Kate Winslet one might be impacted. Beetlejuice 2 is still in production, but finished in the UK. So that's probably going to be shut down. The House of the Dragon is being filmed in UK and Spain, but it is a British equity show, so it might survive this whole thing. So we shall see. Bad Sisters is another one that's interesting as well. So where it's going to go on that end. So yeah, there's some overseas stuff that's going to be affected, but not everything for sure. All right, let's see. Goopy G says, I know a strike is going on, but how awkward must it be when the strike ends and you now have to pretend nothing happened and get back to work? I mean,
I've said the same thing. Part of me can't wait for those statements where it's like, SAG settles or whatever, and they're like, we'd just like to thank our partners in the AMPTP for finally coming to the table, and doing this and that. I can't wait. Like, you're right. It's going to be super awkward.
It happens.
That's business.
Jeff, you fought in relationships. We all fight in relationships. You say the horrible things, and then you make up afterwards because you got emotional and you lost your head. And you're like, you know what? I still love you. I love you too. Let's figure this out. In all sports, right? Talk all that shit. Then after the match, it's let me hug you and pick you up off the canvas after I knocked you out. So, that happens all the time. This is part of the game. Hollywood is full of people with thick skin, especially when they get into leadership positions. So I think everybody will be fine eventually afterwards because you fight tooth and nail for what you believe in. So I don't think that's a negative, to be honest with you. I mean, they didn't go after him personally. They didn't go after his wife or his mom or anything. I mean, there's a difference.
No, but I am surprised, particularly with some of the things you see on social media about, from screenwriters and some actors who,
sure,
have certainly taken some personal shots at executives, and it's like, wow, like, are you expecting to get hired back after this, or is it just like all is fair in war at the moment, and it'll be water under the bridge when this is over? I don't know.
We'll see. Tim Sims' quick reminder that CGI artists have no union to be a part of. Don't know if other special effects artists, practical sound Foley, have unions or not. Right? Yeah, that's something that's going to be explored as well, I think, down the road.
Right. We talked about this when we talked about the Phil Lord story, where it's like these people deserve a union behind them and all the protections that unions bring or whatever, but it's not necessarily Phil Lord's fault that they don't have that, you know?
Yeah, well, we'll see. We'll see. Eric Kirby says, end of show question. 10 years from now, will Victor Wembanyama have an NBA Finals chip? Yes, it's pop. I think that's possible. But I also think injury is possible. So I'm just throwing it out there. I don't know if I buy the kid. They shut him down too early in the summer league, Jeff.
I'm gonna say no.
Yeah. All right. Fair point.
I'm gonna say no.
Jim One says Sound of Freedom is now making more at the box office than Indy 4. Does it suggest some of the audience has frustration with the mainstream Hollywood? I don't know. Sound of Freedom, there's a certain section of the country who is into that story, even though they've been proven that some of it has been fabricated, some of it is true. And please miss me with this bullshit. If you don't like the movie, you support child trafficking. What an infantile, stupid mentality and narrative to have. It's a film that takes liberties and licenses. Some people certainly have supported it. Certainly the right wing supports it and whatever. So yeah, good money, but it also caught an Indiana Jones 4 movie that has got lambasted by some of the critics, mixed reception. So people weren't encouraged to go out and spend the money on it. So there's a difference there. But you can't say because it made all this money, it's somehow a watershed moment to make these kinds of
proves that like movie going is still alive and well, and so is word of mouth. I mean,
right.
Maybe it's like the word of mouth from the wrong kind of people, or I don't know. Their money is just as good as mine,
Yeah.
Really. And I think it just comes down to stories. Like, people want to see that story.
Yep.
They don't care about Indiana Jones.
Yeah.
I personally would rather go see Sound of Freedom than Indiana Jones. I haven't seen either one, but if you offered me, here's a free ticket to both, I would take the Sound of Freedom ticket.
Yeah, not me, but I respect your desire to do that. Let's hit the Streamlabs real quick as well. KW says, it's always great to catch you guys live, but is it me or was this the first? Sorry, that's an old one. Sorry about that, y'all. Jacob Allen, what is it? Okay, Jacob Allen says, JB is the internet's biggest a-hole. Had to block him years ago for being rude, especially towards Jeff. Jeff defending him was admirable. On that note, I've recently seen some critics criticizing Jordan Rumi at World of Real. Critics, stay in your lane. I don't know anything about that, Jeff. Do you know anything about
that? What are you talking about?
The gentleman last week, the writer that you were saying you don't particularly like, but you had
Jason Bailey. Yeah.
Jason Bailey. Yeah.
Wait, what was that?
All right, Jason Bailey is the internet's biggest a-hole. Had to block him years ago for being rude, especially towards Jeff Sneider. Jeff defending him last week was admirable. On that note, I've recently seen some critics criticizing Jordan Rumi at World of Real. Critics, stay in your lane. I don't know Jordan Rumi. I don't know World of Real.
Jordan's a good guy running a really great site. I don't know what they're saying about him. I think he works really hard, and I think he brings an interesting, much needed perspective, independent perspective.
Yeah, but let's get something straight, man. We all in this business. We put ourselves out there. What the fuck? When did we become soft as shit about this? Like, we're out there. We're going to take criticism. We're going to take hits. Jacob, you telling people to stay in their lane. It's a free fucking country. You've got a right to criticize or a right to support and be positive about these things. No one in this business should be getting into this business with a thin ass skin. Don't fucking do it. You're putting yourself out there for people to criticize you. It's like I bring this up all the time. It's like in a Schmodown, those people that looked for that one comment on a sea of positive comments, that one negative comment to retweet with 5 subscribers or 5 followers and go like, this is why it's tough to do the things that we do. Cut it the fuck out. This is you looking for the one negative comment. This is the game. I've taken hits. It isn't easy. It sucks. Jeff's taken hits. It isn't easy. It sucks. But part of what we do this is because we want to get our opinion out there and be part of the conversation. And so taking the hits is part of it. So no, don't know your lane. Do whatever you want to do in terms of, and be respectful, of course, but like, this is the game. So I'm sure Jordan understands that. And as long as he's probably been in the business, this is the game. Am I wrong on this, Jeff?
I think Jordan has a thick skin. I'm not too worried about him.
Yeah. So there you go. All right, let's see here. I am two fly cam says so much news, fellas. I wanted to get your thoughts on the Bob Iger comments. He's going to be cutting budgets for all projects in Marvel and Star Wars. He's also staying on as CEO until 2026 or possibly up to 2031. What happened to finding a new leader for Disney? Jeff, I think we addressed that for the most part. Anything you want to say?
With the budget cuts, he'd already sort of talked about that. I didn't really feel like that. I don't know why that resurfaced in the news this week.
Yeah.
Maybe there was some sort of comment made. But yeah, it is too much. So there's too much content. We don't need a new Marvel series every month. I get that that's one way to keep people glued to Disney Plus, but it's not a good way to get them into theaters. And you'd much rather have them in theaters than waiting for Disney Plus. I just don't like that is the business that you want to be in, is the theatrical business. Streaming, the numbers do not justify the cost of these projects. You cannot keep making Red Notice over and over and over because there aren't enough subscribers in the world to pay for it.
Yeah, right. Exactly. Good point. Gentleman Scientist says Dunkirk was an incredible experience in IMAX. Oppenheimer looks like it will surpass it. If Nolan makes another World War II film to complete a trilogy, what would you want to see him tackle? Thank you, gentlemen.
What hypothetical World War II story would I want to see? I'm good. I'm like World War II out. I don't think I need to see more.
Can we revisit Pearl Harbor after Michael Bay did such a wonderful job with that section of the movie, not the movie itself, but that section of the movie? I don't know if you're going to top it, to be honest with you. And Letters to Iwo Jima is a fantastic film about the Pacific side of things, along with that series on HBO. So I don't know what other story really that you would tell overall, but maybe there's a Hitler film in him. I don't know. And also Jeff from I Am 2 Flycam, are all these castings for Gunn's Superman movie legit? Doomsday? All right, let's use that as a launching point, Jeff, to get into our next section of the show here. We've got 717 of you joining us right now. Thank you very much for joining us live. Please hit a like on this video, subscribe to the channel down below, and if you're watching later, leave a comment on all the stuff that we've been talking about. What are your thoughts on all the comments? Jeff and I do read these comments and comment on them when we feel we need to down there below. So please make sure you do that. So Jeff, James Gunn announced this week that he is putting in Guy Gardner here, played by Nathan Fillion. Hawkgirl Isabella Merced is going to play. Mr. Terrific is going to be in this. Anthony Carrigan is going to be a Metamorpho. Oh, plus there are rumors the Authority is going to make an appearance. And James Gunn responded to some people, to a person who had an issue with this, I think on Threads or Twitter. And he said, well, I'm basically approaching Superman as being a person of two worlds. There's him with Lois and everything involved with the Daily Planet and the editor of the Daily Planet. And then there's the world where heroes already exist. So what are your thoughts on all these people coming in? And do you buy that there's more coming, which has been the rumor as well, to be a part of this movie?
All right. So I have faith in James Gunn, and I'm willing to give him the benefit of the doubt. I believe that he's earned that much.
Listen to this setup, folks. Listen to this setup.
These castings are pretty underwhelming to me. Now, he said, because it's not like we're getting Lex and Jimmy Olsen and all that. We're getting these weirdo characters, which I don't know I necessarily want or need in Superman. Gunn went on, probably not Twitter, some other social media thing, and said Superman is a man of two worlds, Clark with Lois, Jimmy, and Perry, and Superman with his meta-human compatriots. How could I tell a full story about Clark/Superman without including all areas of his life? So that's his excuse for why we're getting casting news for Metamorpho and Hawkgirl and all these characters that I haven't heard of until this week.
Yeah.
Frankly, don't really care about. I've said, again, it can be a strength knowing these characters in this universe inside and out, and knowing all the different ways that we could connect it and make it so cool. There's a flip side to that coin, okay, which is where you're such a fanboy comic book nerd that you're turning off the average person I don't know who the fuck Metamorpho is. Why do I care? Why should I be excited? Give me Lex, so maybe it's just the timing that they haven't found some of those bigger roles, the Pa Kent and Perry White and all that stuff. And these are just sort of smaller parts that they were able to get done negotiations wise before the deadline, because that's really what it is.
Mm-hmm.
They were racing to get these deals done.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's going to be a while before we hear Lex, or if that deal already was done. I mean, I don't know, but you look at Guardians. I know Chris Pratt wasn't a huge deal, but Chris Pratt, Zoe Saldana, Diesel, Bradley Cooper. Now we're talking about Corin Sweat, Anthony Carrigan, Isabella this isn't like what it used to be in the Batman Forever days, when it was like we've got Jim Carrey and Tommy Lee Jones and Nicole Kidman. Like, who are these people? I don't think that the average person knows.
Well, I mean, one of the big complaints about the Ahsoka trailer that came out earlier this week, and I saw a couple of people tweet this out saying, "Hey, everybody, looks like you got homework. You're going to have to watch 5 seasons of Rebels to be able to watch this series of Ahsoka." Looking at all these people that are being introduced, these are deep cuts. Metamorpho is a deep cut in the DC universe. Hawkman, people know. Hawkgirl, lesser people know less about. Mr. Terrific. A lot of mainstream movie fans do not know who Mr. Terrific is. So I'm with Jeff. There's 2 ways to look at this. This is a hell of a challenge, and the guts to want to try to do this, to pull this off. The other side, which is what I tweeted out, because Grace Randolph I retweeted her, and I said I kind of agree with where she's going. This is a lot. This is supposed to be your establishing the universe movie. To throw in all these things, it feels like we're doing the Marvel game that they're currently doing, which is everything that comes out must set up the next thing.
Yep.
And if you're already doing that with the establishing film, I worry about establishing a pattern like this early in the process. Look,
I'm getting a bad
Gunn.
feeling. I'm just getting a bad feeling. And so, like, okay, Nathan Fillion, I get that he could play, I guess Guy Gardner is the more obnoxious of the Green Lanterns or whatever. So maybe, people feel like he has that punchable vibe around him. But like, do I need him to be the third person cast in this movie?
Yeah. I mean, when's the last time Nathan put butts in seats as a lead in a movie?
Yeah. Exactly. It's just it doesn't feel like big like Superman should, and maybe that's going to come with Pa Kent and the Lex Luthor and some of these other roles, if it's Brainiac or whatever. But so far, it's a little underwhelming. Not that Anthony Carrigan isn't a great actor, because he's great.
Of course.
Isabel Merced, she was my up and comer of the month at Collider. I think she's wildly talented.
Yes.
The one that really didn't make sense to me, I have to say. Is Edie Gathegi, who just feels like a name from like 10 years ago or 15 years ago. Like, he just doesn't seem to really have any relevance at the moment to me.
Okay.
He may very well be perfect, and I saw the photo of him next to the photo of Mr. Terrific. You could see that, but I don't know, man. I was just like, there's so many great young black actors these days. I was very surprised that he got that role.
Well, I mean, he was in For All Mankind, which is kind of this quiet darling of a lot of people who've seen it. So maybe that's the thing that kind of put him on the radar for James Gunn, or maybe he's been watching his work for a while. But another vibe that I'm getting from this, Jeff, is it feels like the Suicide Squad all over again, where we had 2 teams in that movie, played by all these different, including Nathan Fillion, played by all these different actors. And I don't know. I just wonder about, why would you introduce heroes that already exist with no establishing stuff, no background, no connection? And I know it's to maybe show Superman showing the way for the heroes to be, which is okay, cool. Let's see where we go with that. But if we don't have a real connection to these characters, why are we going to care that they're learning how to be better heroes if we're not invested in their stories? And I think that's the danger that you run when you introduce too many heroes, is there's not time spent getting to know them. And people are like, well, they introduced Spider-Man in the middle of Civil War. Yeah, because we'd already had multiple movies with those Avengers. You didn't have introduced them, Yeah.
You're spot on. Like, Marvel took its time building this stuff and introducing these superhero groups. And I think that you're right, that DC is under pressure to deliver Marvel-like results and have that kind of success, and they're just like, it just seems so rushed. Like again, I just don't need a Superman movie that's supposed to launch this universe, overflowing with these characters I've never heard.
Yeah. And we'll see. I mean, we'll see.
But so the casting news played in to a little of like what my theory was. A little, it's been debunked a little bit.
Yeah.
So this is what I wanted to just put out there. Because I talked to so back before any of the Superman casting happened, I was talking to a friend in the know about Lex or whatever, and I mentioned Channing Tatum. Yeah. And they'd said, "Oh, well, that's the next shoe that's going to drop," and it was just a very cryptic, innocuous comment, suggesting to me that Channing had something big in the works. Now, I've since heard that whatever that was, has probably been scuttled by the strike. So it's not like it was like some big project that will still be there, months later necessarily. I don't know what it was, but when before I had sort of heard that part of it this morning, I'd taken that to a friend and I'd said, well, what is this other shoe that could drop with Channing Tatum? Could he be the Thing in Fantastic Four? Could he be Lex Luthor? And someone said, you know what? The thing that has to be casting soon, and because it is the Green Lantern series.
Yes, right.
And so I was like, oh, like could and then they announced the name as Guy Gardner, and I was like, could Channing Tatum be Hal Jordan?
Wow,
would he be a good choice for that? I think that Channing Tatum is a movie star in a town that is dwindling numbers of movie stars. He's coming off The Lost City, which was a huge hit. We've already been over some of this stuff on past podcasts. I know. So it's not that there's any inside info or anything. It's just like, I don't know, like why isn't this guy a part of the DCU or the MCU yet? Plus, he has the kind of sense of humor I think James Gunn would value.
Yeah, I mean, certainly from the 21 Jump Street to 2 movies, and certainly the Magic Mike stuff. This guy's got a good sense of humor about himself and confident about himself. Could be fun to add to the DC universe. An interesting Hal Jordan, a name I would not have thought of for Hal Jordan, Channing Tatum. But, I mean, he can play that cocky, good-looking, all-American guy who is also the pilot. So, and have a sympathy to Hal Jordan that the comics don't always have with Hal Jordan. So, could be an interesting twist.
Here's my other reasoning for thinking.
Okay.
They had, this show's been in the works for a while, and there was one version that was going to have Finn Wittrock and Jeremy Irvine. This show is too expensive to cast those guys in it. I think that these days, in order to stand out, you need basically a movie star on your TV show. You need Idris Elba in Hijack. You need Taron Egerton in Blackbird, whatever it is. Right. I feel like you need a movie star particularly to justify the cost of something like Green Lantern. And again, men like him, women like him. Yeah. I think that Channing will, unless he doesn't want it. That's the thing. Unless he just like, I want to focus on directing. I know. I'd also heard that, Reed Carolyn, who's his, producing partner, they've been together for quite a while, that Reed had been taking meetings solo. So I don't know if they've split or, if Channing was planning on basically acting in something that was going to take up a big chunk of time that Reed couldn't be involved in. Let's just say it was Superman. Like, Reed's not going to come on as a producer on Superman. Yeah. You're going to have to do something on your own for 6 months or whatever. So I don't know. Well, I just want to keep an eye on the Channing Tatum thing, because that Green Lantern show has to be casting soon, and I think that they need a real star for it. Yeah, they're doing it. Somebody's asking, are they still doing that Green Lantern series? No, they're doing a new Green Lantern series, not the Green Lantern one that they were working on before. This is a different approach under James Gunn's stewardship. And it seems like Nathan is going to jump over into that one and be a part of that one, maybe as a recurring character in that version of the. I think so too, unless they kill him off for some reason or something in Superman. But I don't know why you would do that. You'd probably want to, keep your buddy emploid. Yeah, right. Kill him off right away. So I do think that he will make the leap to that show, but it just seems like a weird first building block for that show. Like, don't you want to find your Jon Stewart and your Hal Jordan? Maybe they already have him. I don't know. Right. I mean, we'll see, dude. And I see people like, down James Gunn, blah, 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 and I get it.
But it's not, look, don't compare James Gunn to James Cameron. Those are two completely different stratospheres. No offense to anybody who thinks they're in the same ballpark. They're not. All right. James Gunn, you can go back. Yes, Guardians of the Galaxy totally worked. But Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 2, a lot of people didn't like and were very vocal about it. And then Guardians of the Galaxy 3 certainly did money, but you can't argue that every one of those storylines was perfectly constructed in that film and worked. It doesn't. So, I mean, it's a different situation. Cameron is a gold maker. Gunn, I think, still we'll see what this situation is like. And having to do a Superman film, there's a lot of pressure and a lot of expectations. And people, as we saw with Man of Steel, people want their Superman. And I saw their version of Superman. And I saw some people saying, well, nobody knew Henry Cavill before Man of Steel. Right. And look what happened to Man of Steel. Warner Brothers was scared because it didn't make as much money as they thought it should have. And so they fucked it up by having BVS, which was terrible, in my opinion. So,
it's tricky because you want James Gunn to bring the flavor of James Gunn.
Right. The Gunn version. Yes.
You also don't want Superman to just be a James Gunn. Like you can't have too much of James Gunn. You don't want it to turn into the Suicide Squad.
Well, and look at the people they're casting. Those are all, well, for the most part, those are funny, quippy people. NoHo Hank, Nathan Fillion, in Serenity and whatever. He's casting people who are funny, and everyone told me, oh no, he's going to do a different vibe for Superman. It's not going to be the Suicide Squad. If they're all punning it up and they're all quipping it up around Superman, then it is going to be the same vibe. And I wonder what that feels like going forward. Look, he's doing something different. God love him. DC wants him to do it. Zaslav wants him to do it. I'm open-minded. I'm just a little concerned right now, but that doesn't mean I can't change my mind down the road as I see more and more and the trailer and whatever. So just for right now, I'm a little concerned. That's all. Yeah. All right. Well, let's take another break here, Jeff, and we'll get into some more stuff right after this. All right, Jeff, let's move on to the Emmys here, my man. What are your thoughts? I know with the strike impending, or the strike that's happening tonight, it might be weird to talk about it, but we should talk about its news. The Emmy nominations were released this week. Some notable snubs: Poker Face not being nominated, Diego Luna not being nominated, but Andor getting a Best Drama Series. That's a big surprise. That was really cool to see. But Kenobi getting nominated, a lot of people were surprised by that as well. But what did you think about the nominations across the board? Any snubs in your opinion? Any surprises that you were happy to see, or that you were surprised to see in a negative way? What are your thoughts about the Emmys?
I just feel like there's a contraction happening within the audience, where the audience is only watching a handful of shows, which is why so many categories were dominated by one or two shows.
Yes.
They have 8 slots to fill out. So shows like Better Call Saul get in there or whatever. And obviously the show has its fans, but it was interesting that Giancarlo and Jonathan Banks weren't nominated. I think people want the new, and I don't mean that there weren't recurring nominees. You're still going to get your Bill Haders and your Jason Sudeikis and the cast from those shows, but when Jason Segel is getting in over Steve Martin, I think it's that just people like new. So that was the takeaway. I was stunned that Blackbird was not nominated for Limited.
Yeah.
That really was very, very surprised. I'm rewatching that now and it's great. But really when I think about it, the proof that they're not watching this stuff is that Hocus Pocus 2 was nominated over Reality, which is the HBO movie with Sydney Sweeney.
The madness. Utter.
Focus 2 is a movie I could not get through. It is unwatchable, and basically desecrated the original practically. I just you clearly did not watch Reality.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you about Harrison Ford. I mean, a lot of people were upset that he wasn't nominated either for 1923 or Shrinking. Are you one of those people that was surprised by his non-nomination?
Very shocked by not getting a nomination for Shrinking. I thought he was easily first or second in that category. I thought that was a layup. I didn't expect him to get anything for 1923. I don't think that the Taylor Sheridan shows are particularly popular.
True.
And sorry, no. Particularly popular with Emmy voters, I should say. They're certainly popular outside of Emmy voters.
Yes.
It doesn't feel like Hollywood's cup of tea necessarily. And plus, that interview that he gave, I don't think did him any favor with voters.
I mean, why do you do that right before the nominations? It doesn't make sense.
The idea that Diego Luna, even though Andor was nominated and The Old Man was not, the idea that Diego Luna was going to get a nomination over Jeff Bridges, I was never on board with that.
But I mean, come on. I mean, you think Jeff doing? Come on, dude. I think I liked The Old Man. By the way, that's one of those series that's going to be affected by the strike.
I didn't finish that one either.
I liked The Old Man. I thought Jeff was great in the show, but I thought with what Diego was doing, there was much more going on than what was going on for Jeff Bridges in that show. And remember, there's another actor playing Jeff Bridges for large sections of that show in different episodes. So I think this was more of a people love Jeff Bridges and they're going to vote for him type of thing, more than they felt his performance was better than Diego's. And who knows? There's a second season of Andor coming that's going to ask more of Diego. So maybe that's where we're going to get the nomination for him in that category. We shall see. But yeah, you're right. It's kind of it leans towards certain shows. I mean, Chippendales, Welcome to Chippendales wasn't even anywhere close to a nomination. Commando and Johnny didn't get nominated. They argue he did great work. I mean, would you remove Steve Carell rather, from The Patient?
Got nominated.
What's that?
Kumail got nominated.
Would you remove? What about Steve Carell? Were you surprised by that nomination?
He didn't
get. Did he not get it?
He didn't.
Sorry. Go ahead.
Steve Carell did not get nominated.
Yeah. Were you surprised that he wasn't nominated? I guess is what I'm saying. Okay.
I was surprised that Donald Gleason wasn't nominated.
Gotcha. Okay.
But yeah, that show I think was tough to get through for a lot of people.
Right. What about Fleischman is in Trouble? I didn't see a lot of good reviews for this show, so I was surprised to see it getting some love on the Emmy side of things. Were you surprised by that?
I did not watch a single minute of Fleischman is in Trouble, although part of me kind of wanted to.
Yeah.
But all I heard was good things, particularly from my Jewish friends. So maybe just, there's a lot of Jewish people in the TV Academy and maybe they, really enjoyed it.
Did the Kenobi nod surprise you?
Yeah, it did.
That means what you're watching now didn't get nominated, right? Kenobi got in over Blackbird, right? Same category, isn't it?
Yeah. No, I think I did. I was surprised again. Didn't watch Obi-Wan. I'd heard mixed. I heard Obi-Wan was okay, but certainly not the standout Star Wars series. But, maybe that just speaks to again a lot more people watching Obi-Wan than Blackbird, which is a challenging subject matter. Although obviously Dahmer got a slew of nominations as well. So
right. What about The Boys, Jeff? Why is The Boys?
That's not an Emmy show. Yeah, I think it just suffers from that sort of bias against it. But Anthony Starr should be getting nominated every year. This guy's absolutely magnetic. You can't take 100% your eyes off him when he is on screen as Homelander.
Yeah. It was fantastic in The Covenant, in this small role he played in The Covenant. So, yeah, I would like to see more of him. And please encourage him to do more, for God's sakes, by giving him nominations for sure. All right. And let's see here. My mouse just went out, so I can't get to anything right now. So let me see what's going on.
It sounds like the box office is
let's talk about
it. Good, but maybe not where Paramount had hoped.
Yeah.
Is that right? Yeah.
Yeah. Well, no, it's 65. They're looking at a high number here, but the 15.5 million for previews, that's not bad, Jeff. Don't you think? That's a good number to have.
No, of course it is good. Plus, it's also, I don't think when people even knew what day the movie was opening. I think people still think it opens tomorrow.
Right.
I think there's a lot of confusion with those Wednesday release dates.
Yeah.
I think that movie will have legs throughout the summer.
Yes,
particularly with word of mouth being so strong. But I think Paramount would have, maybe liked to have that be a little bit bigger.
Go ahead. What were your thoughts on the Napoleon trailer?
I think that looks good. So I read on FYC sort of what I'd heard from people who have seen that, which is that visually, it's dynamite, and that all like the battle scenes are fantastic. Obviously, that's why Ridley wants to make a Napoleon movie, to stage those kinds of scenes. But I heard that the love story was a little undercooked.
Ooh.
And that his characterization of Napoleon, may be very accurate, but it's still like a cold character who's like kind of tough to root for. Whereas in most of these military movies, we're rooting for the soldier or the military leader, whoever it is.
Yeah.
This is a little bit more nuanced, which may be problematic for a wider audience. I don't know.
All right. That's an interesting situation there. I liked it. I thought it was a good trailer and got me excited. And like you told me, they had some fantastic, what do you call it? Battle scenes that were shown at CinemaCon.
Right.
So
like cannonballs going through the frozen water where they don't realize they're even standing on like ice, basically. And then they all just start to go into the water. Like all that stuff was pretty great.
Yeah, for sure. Let's see. Let's hit some of these Streamlabs here that have come through since that time here. Let's see. What is it? Here we go. Trace Fire says, I don't think you really need big names for a Superman movie. Superman is a big enough name by itself to get people to the theater.
That's what we think. That's what we've all thought. That's the way we've been operating for the last 15 years. Oh, don't worry about it. Superman, it's Superman. Everyone's going to come. And they didn't. They didn't. Not the way that they came out for Spider-Man.
Right.
Not even really the way that they've come out for Batman. So
that's a good point.
Is that the character's new ceiling, or can you elevate him out into that real upper echelon?
I mean, what happens if this film comes out and it does less than Man of Steel? I mean, what's the conversation then? I'd be real curious. Cooley High says, what's up, homies? What's up, Cooley? Good. It was good to see you, brother. Superman Legacy feels like a lot. Can't we just get a good Superman story with him maybe facing Brainiac or Lex? It just feels too much. Yeah, I agree. Too many people wanted to say like, well, we already had that Superman solo story. It's like, well, no, we've never had him like just kind of taking on Brainiac or something like that. Could be interesting, could be different. It could be new and still establish Superman and what have you without needing to have all these other characters in it. People trying to reframe the narrative in a certain way to fit their perspective on it. It's not, there's wider ways to look at this. So what are your thoughts, Jeff?
Again, and I know that we don't have the full cast for those comments, being like, just be patient. I get that. I just, okay, Brainiac, I'll make an exception for him. But like, people want to see Lex Luthor. They want to see the classic villains.
Yeah.
And so when you start throwing out all these other characters who no one's ever heard of, people are just like, oh, I can skip that.
Well, that's what I wonder about. Those of us in the bubble here, we're like, no, I don't want to see another Lex Luthor versus Superman movie. But you might be actually in the minority because there may be a whole bunch of people who are not in your bubble who the studio wants to go after, who are totally fine seeing another version of the Superman Lex Luthor story with new actors, new approaches, new versions of these characters that they might enjoy. So the people in the bubble who read all the comics and know all the stuff and are in the know about Superman, y'all actually might be the minority.
You have that audience already. Those people,
they're going to show up
to get people like, obviously I'm going to see everything because I'm a critic or whatever, but like, you have people like me who are like on the fence and like don't feel like they need to see every comic book movie. Give them a reason to see it. And more importantly, give them fewer reasons not to not see it.
I think you are the barometer because you don't go see everything. You didn't go see Indie. There's a number of the mainstream movies that you sometimes do not go see. In my experience doing the show with you and knowing you have to be convinced to go. So if there's a newer approach to this, you're right. You're the one they want to get in there who has some knowledge, but not an extensive knowledge of Superman and Lex Luthor or whatever.
Truthfully, like, okay, so they did Lex back in the day, like in the 70s, right?
Yeah, with the
that's like irrelevant. No one remembers any of that shit. Who cares?
Yeah.
Jesse Eisenberg and Kevin Spacey, like, I don't think of them as Lex Luthor. Like, I do think that there's an opportunity for some actor out there to come in and hit a home run with Lex Luthor and define the character for a new generation. I don't think any of these actors have dibs on that. And so I understand. Yeah, we've seen Lex a lot. He has a rogues gallery of villains. Let's see somebody else. Yeah, we've seen Lex a lot, but I don't think we've seen him done like perfectly.
Right. Yeah. I mean, how many people knew Ra's al Ghul before they went to see Batman Begins, for fuck's sake? But they knew the Joker. They showed up for Heath Ledger and the Joker. They know that.
Exactly. That's another thing, John. I never loved Batman Begins. I think that's why. It's the lack of a strong villain.
Yeah. That's important.
I want to see Joker. I want to see Bane in the next movie. But yeah, Batman Begins, Ra's al Ghul. Who cares?
Yeah.
The thing I will say about Lex Luthor, I don't think Nick Holt is going to that one anymore. Okay. I think he's out.
Okay.
I think he's just like, I don't want anything really to do with this anymore.
Stop bringing me in for this shit. If I was let me tell you, when I was an actor and you would get you're on a veil, it was exciting the first few times. And then when you didn't get the job, you kind of dealt with it. After a while, I just said to my agent, don't call me unless I have the job. I don't want to be on a veil. I don't care if I'm on a veil. Only call me when I have the job. I think this whole needs to say this to us.
Offer only.
Yeah, offer only. Fuck off with everything else. Offer only. Yeah. Owen Lanning says everyone's made Zaslav the villain of film Twitter, not realizing that every studio exec thinks money first and does shady things. Thanks, guys. Favorite part of the week.
I think that, listen, there are still some classy executives. They all have to get their hands dirty from time to time. I mean, you're running a business, this isn't a charity. Yeah, you're dealing with artists and stuff like that. But you still have to be mindful of the bottom line. There's a way to do that, like a Donna Langley, who also got a promotion of sorts this week. She got an expanded portfolio, if you will, that will also give her oversight of television.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you don't see Donna Langley making unforced errors like this. She does not stick her foot in her mouth like Zaslav and Iger do, or now Iger does, like every other week, basically. Yeah. Has had just as much opportunity, but wisely does not interject herself into these situations. And when she does, it's usually as a mediator of sorts.
Yeah. I think some people interject themselves because they want the smoke. They want that smoke, man. Justin Toner says, was disappointed that Star Trek Picard Season 3 didn't get many Emmy nominations. Should have gotten more love, especially with the acting and writing. Star Trek is always going to be on the fringe outside for these
thing. Exactly.
Yeah.
That's a very niche thing.
Yeah, it's unfortunate because this was one of the best seasons of Star Trek ever, yet it's not going to get that attention that you hope it would get. I agree, Justin. I agree. SJC360 says, for movie poster, how do actor names get ordered? Who gets top billing? How about co-stars? Jeff, do you want to handle that one?
That's all like contractual stuff. I mean, obviously, the bigger star is going to get mentioned first, unless they're not the true star of the movie, but in which case you're fighting for the with or the and positioning.
Yeah.
Sometimes you see actors who simply, demand that no matter what. And then that's how you wind up with 2 or 3 people getting with so-and-so, then with so-and-so and so-and-so, And it gets to be too much sometimes. But yeah.
It's like seeing 10 company logos before the movie starts. It's like, I get it. You all helped to finance the film. But can the fucking film start already? God damn. One quick thing here that I wanted to run by you. Oh, yeah. We got Keltrick Pick and said, why are people still doubting James Gunn? Hasn't this guy proven himself time and time again? I have full faith in whatever James has planned. Great for you, Celtic. Guess what? We're balancing the universe. You have full faith. We have some skepticism. We have brought balance to the force. So I don't think there's anything wrong with that. You've got to have a healthy amount of skepticism and a healthy amount of open-mindedness. I think that's the best way to go into anything.
I wanted to bring up John Ridley wrote a column for Deadline about all the exits of the diversity executives.
Yes,
and it was
last week.
Column. It was a good column the other day, but it ended right where he's talking about Justice Ketanji Brown Jackson on the Supreme.
The Supreme Court justice. Yes,
right, and he's like, well, I hope and pray Justice Jackson never leaves the court, because she's obviously wants affirmative action and more equality and all that stuff. Well, I hope and pray she never leaves the court. If she did, we could desperately use her as an exec here in Hollywood. No, we couldn't. Okay. This is the problem. It's she loves equality and diversity. Like she'd make a great executive. Actually, no. Yeah. People who have a sense of story would make a great executive. People who know movies would make a great executive. And this is the whole problem with the industry these days is they just think that they just find people who line up with their ideology and then give them jobs.
Right.
Okay. It's crazy.
But that's the way it's always been, isn't it, Jeff? I mean, it's always been that way. Who do you know? Who are you related to? Do you think the same way I do? Okay, I'll give you the job. It's the really secure and knowledgeable people who know who they are, who are okay to hire people who bring different points of views, different perspectives, who challenge them a little bit. That's not always the way it goes with Hollywood. You know that. But I agree with you, Justin. I think it's a step down for her to come be an executive after you've been a Supreme Court fucking justice.
Obviously it is.
Yeah.
But it was just like, I don't know, indicative of this kind of thinking where it's just like, I just need someone who agrees with me. And these are the kinds of people who should have jobs. I'm like, this was not the way to end this otherwise good column.
Yeah, I thought, and remember, I brought this up last week on the show that I thought it was really odd this was happening. There were 7 of them who were gone. So to me, I know what this means. I in my opinion, I know what this means.
Yeah.
Studios are done with this shit now. They see that the progressive approach to things, people aren't showing up. And I blame a lot of the people who were advocating for this shit, but wouldn't show up or didn't get their people to show up or use their platforms to influence people to show up at these movies. You all wanted to have progressive leads. You all wanted to have all this stuff and affirmative action and show all the diversity. I was all for it as well. Did you show up like I showed up to all this stuff? You've got to show up. And if you don't, then it's just all fucking lip service. It really is. And so the studios saw it and they're like, we're not making any money doing this shit. And as Jeff said earlier, it's a fucking business. And at the end of the day, if they think the progressive shit isn't working, they're not going to keep going down that path because you're not showing them that they should.
It's the kinds of movies and stories that are being made. It's just that people don't want to be lectured to. I really don't feel like I grew up at a time that like there was no black movies or stars or like I grew up at a great time, I think, but it felt organic. It felt natural. It didn't feel forced down my throat to the extent that it sometimes does now.
That's a fair point. Like the entertainment in the past, the messages were always there. This idea that all of a sudden Hollywood went woke is ridiculous. It's always been there, preaching the idea of accepting people from different cultures, accepting people of different races, different genders.
I don't want those stories. Just give me a dead president. Give me dead president. Okay. I was 12 years old. I was watching dead presidents. Okay. I don't need,
all this. That's not the only black
exploration of race and this and that. I was just like, just give me an entertaining movie.
That's fair.
Just tell me a fun story. I get why the Till story needs to be told. It's a very important story. Of course. But like, that's not going to bring in box office. Like,
well, I think it's a number of things, right? And I know we got to wrap up, but it's a number of things. I don't think we're as intelligent as we were back then. I don't think we were wanting to know about this stuff. I mean, Malcolm X came out and it made a lot of money, and it brought to the front someone that a lot of people had kind of pushed aside. But you do that with Till nowadays with people in the tribalism and the anger that's going on. It's not going to work, unfortunately. So
maybe it's I wish that I was as ignorant or as naive, not ignorant, but as naive as I was as a kid. Because I'd sat down to watch Black Presidents, and I don't sit there thinking I'm going to watch a black movie tonight. It's just a movie that looked good, and now that would be marketed as this black movie. It would be marketed as Judas First the Black Messiah or Queen and Slim or whatever. And, people don't show up because they feel like it's a certain kind of thing.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, and I said this on the panel at Star Wars Celebration last year on the Latino panel, if we don't show up for this shit, they're going to stop making this shit. And don't go crying on your social media about it because you didn't fucking show up and you didn't get people to show up. And that matters. That fucking matters. I remember when I interviewed the director of The Kitchen, the film was not good, but she said, we have to get women to show up to films, even if the films aren't good, because for decades, men showed up to shitty movies and had them make money. So you've got to, in order to tell the studio, good or bad, we're still going to show up. You've got to show up. And so,
but it's ultimately a business. And so when people don't show up, don't be surprised when that stuff stops getting made. It's we've 100%. Had enough time to train audiences for this stuff.
That's why I'm going to be curious how Blue Beetle does, brother. It's a Latino story, but it's a universal story. Is it going to work? Are people going to show up? Are people going to love it? I hope so. But, we're going to see for sure.
I think that they'll show up possibly in enough numbers to justify the budget. That's the thing, is that it's made for a responsible figure.
Yeah.
And so there are modest expectations that I think can be met. And you don't need to go crazy with a marketing spend either. There's way too much money spent on marketing these days.
Yeah.
But budgets in general have to come down because that's not why people go to the movies for this stuff. They go for the stories and the characters.
I think you're 100% right. The stories are what matters. Cooley High, one last thing. Say, man, I love you guys. You make my week. You remind me of Siskel and Ebert. Oh, that's a high compliment. Also, release Batgirl, LOL. I want to see it. Yeah, Jeff, should they release Batgirl on Max?
I don't think that they can, right? Legally, I mean, if you've taken the tax write-down, I feel like that can't see the light of day. Otherwise, they would love, believe me, this fall when things start to dry up or early next year, they would love to be able to put that out and dangle that for Max subscribers. I do want to say, though, as much as I have defended some moves from David Zaslav, you know, that is the Batgirl one. In talking to more people from Warner Brothers, is the one where they're like, that was a bad call,
right?
Like even people at Warner Brothers who, you know, understand what Zaz is doing there and what his mission is. Even those people are like, we shouldn't have done that, because that it really fucks with our reputation in the creative community if they think we're just going to, you know, bin movies basically.
100%, man. 100%. It was a bad move, especially when you look at Flash and the new statistics that came out that said it's the biggest flop in 100 years.
Those are different. That's a totally different thing. I mean, what was he supposed to do? Know that and not release the movie? Like,
no, but I'm saying when you compare it in retrospect, it looks like you chose this film over the other film, and now it looks bad. Is what
you chose a movie that you literally was too expensive.
Yeah.
And dump that on Max, and you can't take just a write down on that. You have to release that movie.
Yeah, release them both. I said release them
both. Release them both. No, not if you truly believe that this is not good for the brand.
I mean, Shazam 2 wasn't good for the fucking brand.
Nah, I don't have a problem with like the trashing of Batgirls, you know, so much like other than just like what it says to the community going.
Right. I think that's a fair point. I think that's something we can both agree on. It was a bad sign to creatives and people who want to work with WB. There's no guarantee your film's actually going to come out if you come and work with us at the studio, and that's a bad.
He didn't want to chase what he perceived as bad money with bad money and have to spend another 50-60 million on marketing for that.
Yeah. Fantastic 314 says, different from Jeff, I grew up with the Caucasian experience being shoved down my throat. Movies like Breakfast Club and Ferris Bueller, the hot mic is vastly awesome. Thanks, guys. I mean, that's a fair point, Jeff. A lot of people of color have spoken about how they've had to watch these white movies for decades, you know, that didn't reflect their life and what they were going through, because that's a fantasy world, right? The 80s movies were a fantasy world. You can enjoy them all you want, but there was racism, there was police brutality going on in black communities. It wasn't until rap in the 90s, the gangster rap, that actually woke people up to what was going on in these communities. And that didn't just start happening in the 90s. So there's this perception in the 80s that everything was all right and we were all kumbaya-ing down the street. Bullshit. There was shit going on in these communities of color that people weren't talking about while you all were enjoying the latest John Hughes movie. So I think there's a way to look at a little more perspective in how you look at these things. So, you know,
I understand that as someone of color in the 80s, like, yeah, that all the movies had white leads and all that stuff.
Yeah.
But I don't really I don't see Hollywood's need to placate, you know, all these people and tell stories that reflect them, and like just tell the stories that you want to tell and
yeah,
you know, cast them accordingly. I mean, could Ferris Bueller have been about a young black guy? Yeah, it could have.
Yeah.
Maybe nowadays it would have.
Yeah, right. Which would be a lot of fun. Yeah. I mean, we're seeing that. Yeah.
Those movies made money. I mean, those are great movies. Like, what do you want to say?
Right.
That they should start black people?
No. It's just saying, like, you know, there were other stories to tell, and it took Spike Lee to start making some of these black films mainstream, and I thank God for that. And so there's more to come for sure. But I hear what you're saying. Again, at the end of the day, it's about, well, if we make these movies, if you're not going to show up, what do you want us to do? We're not going to keep throwing good money after bad. It doesn't make sense. So, all right, let's wrap it up there, Jeff. I don't think there's any more Streamlabs or Super Chats for us to discuss. Anything more you want to jump into or anything more you want to say? We're at an hour and a half already.
No. We're good. We can wrap this up.
Okay. All right. Let's wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for joining us here on the Hot Mic. We appreciate it madly. Thanks for the Streamlabs and Super Chats. Appreciate the lively comments and the chat that going throughout. We had 700 of you watching us right now. Please remember, hit a like on the video right now. Right now. Go and hit that thumbs up. Subscribe to the channel right now. Hit that subscribe button. It literally takes you 2 seconds. and hit that bell button so you see when we're dropping all the content we do here. And sometimes when the hot mic changes times and days, you can be made aware of it if you subscribe and hit that bell button. A lot of you complain that we don't give you enough notice. That's the way you can get the notice quickest. Right. Jeff, another fun show. Please let people know where they can find you, man, and what you got going on.
Quickly, I just wanted to clarify that I don't feel this stuff is being shoved down my throat because I'll eat it up no matter what. But I think that people, the audience that has disappeared from, movie theaters, I feel like that is what they feel. I'm at lamag.com for my review. You can check out my review of Mission Impossible Dead Reckoning. Abovetheline.com. We've got some interesting strike stuff coming, some good columns just about how nostalgia is totally whiffed this summer, other than Tom Cruise, hopefully. And that's it.
There you go. As for me, it's at The Rocha Says on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok. The Outlaw Nation on Twitch. And yes, on Threads. At The Rocha Says on Threads. Are you on Threads, Jeff?
No, Joe.
It's a safe space, man. Make the jump. I like being on Threads.
Safe space? Is that what you need, John? A safe space?
Yeah, I mean, to talk to anything that removes toxicity. I'm always a fan.
Instagram is for me.
That's what Threads is. It's an extension of Instagram. What's wrong with you?
But I don't.
It's Twitter through Instagram. That's what it essentially is.
That's just what I need. More tweeting.
True. As for the Outlaw Nation channel, we've got Jedi Way that just dropped earlier today with me and Laura Kelly breaking down that Ahsoka trailer. Tomorrow, the Geek Buddies are back with their main show and possibly the review of Star Trek Strange New Worlds, a new episode as well. Look for my spoiler review of Mission Impossible 7 sometime this weekend. All right, that's it from us. You all are the best. We love you madly. Take care of yourselves. Be well. Have a great weekend. And we'll talk to you next time with a brand new episode here of The Hot Mic.
Thank you.